I am really excited for our next guest, David Jacob. He's a very long-time friend of mine, somebody I look up to, and has been really successful in pretty much everything that he does. He's the CEO of one of the largest insurance brokerages and risk managers in the world, CEO of Asia. He's a world-renowned DJ, and most recently he's been involved in the longevity movement for himself, and he's got an upcoming venture. But this is a fantastic opportunity to hear insights from somebody that's been successful in so many areas of his life, and he will give tidbits on where he was and how he got here. So I'm looking forward to this interview. And I'd also like to add that this video is being supported by Global Mortgage Group. The email is www.gmg.asia. We're an international real estate financing brokerage. And also American Mortgages, which is the world's only US bank that lends to non-residents, including foreigners and US expats looking for a mortgage to buy a home in the US. All the details are below. All right, David, thanks for coming. This is a long time in the making. You're a super busy guy with all your endeavors and achievements, what we will get into. This show is about speaking to interesting people that I've come cross paths with in my life and hear their journey from where they were to where they are and how they got here, challenges that they saw, and interesting tidbits that you can share with the audience that they can take home with. So I guess introduce yourself, like what you do for your day job, what you do for your night job, and what's your hobby, because those are two really big parts of your life that I know, and then we can dig into that.
Great. All right. Well, listen, man. Thank you so much for having me, Dee. It's obviously a pleasure to be on your show. Super happy to give you any insights and nuggets about me and my life. Hopefully, it's interesting to your viewers. So let's start. So David Jacob, I'm 56. I'm currently the CEO for Marsh Asia. Marsh is a professional services firm. We're headquartered in New York, and we give advice around strategy, risk, and people. So pretty much risk management, HR consulting, strategic consulting, and reinsurance. Our brands are Marsh, Mercer, Oliver Wyman, and Guy Carpenter. So I look after the Asia region for them. I've been with them for 35 years. Pretty much my first job out of university, and journey is still going. But outside of that, I have many hobbies, as you mentioned. First off, I'm a father. I'm married. I've got a beautiful wife, Amanda, who you know very well, and 4 amazing kids. But I also am very much into music. Music is really my core passion. I've been into music ever since I was, sort of 8 to 10 years old, collecting records, and it's accelerated into full-on DJing, and I've been DJing pretty much half my life. Which is something that's near and dear to me. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But recently, I've been so involved in terms of health and wellness. So that's sort of the other block that I try to sort of balance with my life. So I've got an amazing job, lovely family. I've got my music passion, but now I've really found, I guess I would say probably, when I retire, this is something that I'm going to really dive deeper into, is this whole longevity, health span versus lifespan component. So yeah, just a little bit about myself, and look forward to sharing that with you and your viewers.
Cool. So I guess the easiest thing is to break this up into 3 segments. So let's just say your professional career is super successful. I've watched you kind of grow up the ranks since I've known you, and now you've pretty much hit the pinnacle of managing this business, which is a massive business in Asia. I don't know how you do it, but you seem to pull it off. So when you first got started, talk about your, I guess for the audience, it's about people out there that think that, you get into a business, you put in the time, there's an upward trajectory, but, what was that journey like? What were some of the challenges? What were some of the the things that you remember vividly or fondly about your journey when you first entered Marsh to where you are now?
Yeah, so look, I mean, like I said, it's my first and only job out of university, right? And I joined as a graduate trainee in the New York office back in 1990, and it was a very different world back then. I was probably one of very few Asians that were employed, by the firm. And I would have to say that, of course, you can always say hard work pays off, but you really need to have talented leaders that you basically are attached to. And I was very fortunate to have just the amazing leadership throughout, I guess throughout my entire career, but I would say, the first 15 years, or what I would call the first 15 foundational years of my career, I really had female leaders that I was working for. And they taught me so many different things about how to lead, very different obviously than the last maybe 15, 20 years where I had male leaders. So this whole concept of being super balanced between male, female, of course, the diversity word is kind of a negative word these days, but I still hold dear in terms of the lessons learned from the female leaders that I basically worked for my first 15 years. And that really taught me about flexibility, empathy, being open to ideas. And of course, the male leaders as well were highly influential in terms of, the latter part of my career. So I think having amazing leaders and mentors was just something that I really
interesting.
really
I didn't know that. I didn't know that actually. And now that I think about it, I mean, first of all, you're totally right? So my journey, I was a banker, and you kind of don't know anything. You're struggling with one, just trying to make it, and you're trying to learn as much as you can. And at least in banking, it still is kind of a learn from me type business, but it was always males, right? And it was always, as you can imagine, it was very male dominated, very male things. And I think I've only had one, I mean, aside from my wife.
Yeah.
Permanently. Hi, Christina. One female boss, which was sort of a dotted line, but that's an incredible story because it's a very different way of managing. So you got that stuff early on, and then, interesting.
And so it's something that to this day, I really try to lean into, if I think about how my management team is composed, or when I look at succession planning, it's always thinking about, where are my female leaders? Because I do feel it, you need that healthy mix to be able to be successful.
Okay, so, and then, running the CEO of this big, ginormous business in Asia, like what's the biggest challenge? You wake up every day, you get pumped up, you get motivated, I'm sure you're doing some health hacking in the morning, but what gets you up in the morning, and what's like this challenge that you're dealing with at that level? Because I think people, they see the CEOs that are always in the public domain, the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos of the world, but CEOs are CEOs, right? They're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of egos, a lot of emotions, a lot of stress. But in your world, like what are those? What are some of the challenges and stresses that you face day to day?
Well, of course, of course, performance is obviously the barometer, right? So, thinking about our footprint in Asia, we're pretty much the largest, what I would call risk advisor in the region, where in every single country, we've got 12 countries across Asia, we're number one in every single country, bar one, which I'm hoping we're going to get there in Thailand in a couple of years' time. So it's always about how do we continue to maintain that level of dominance? How do we continue to deliver, sort of year-on-year double-digit earnings growth that we're accustomed to, and we're in Asia, we need to lead the pack. And so the first thing that always comes to mind is, like, how do I continue to make sure that I have the best team in the region, right? Because we're nothing without my CEOs in each country, my senior leadership team. So for me, that's the priority. How do I make sure that I am spending enough time with the team, making sure that they have what they need to be successful. And at the same time, as you know, since we're number one, everybody's knocking on our door. Everybody's trying to poach our people. So for me, talent, being able to retain and attract the right talent for me is number one priority.
And how much of the management philosophy comes from above you, a Marsh philosophy, or how much is it your own that you've developed over time?
Yeah, look, I think every great company will have their leadership principle and their dynamics that they try to instill. I think for the most part, I would say 60 to 70% of those principles are something that I adhere to, and then the 30% is localized, something that you feel you bring based on the years of experience that you've had, all the difficult issues that you've had to contend with over the years, the learnings. Then you start to apply that, and it becomes your ability, because we're all different.
Yeah.
We all have different styles, but I would probably say that 30% to be bespoke and create this leadership persona that really exemplifies who you are, I think is key.
Yeah, that's well said. Also, I think growing up in Asia, especially growing up where you grew up, you get to meet interesting personalities along the way, and I think that joking aside, I think that it teaches you how to deal with very different types of people and different cultures, because at the end of the day, everybody comes from different places, and everybody's in banking, everybody's sort of motivated by money, right? But it's not always the case. There's things that in everybody's background that I guess you have to feel, at least your senior leadership team. Maybe it's family oriented, maybe it's health, quality of life oriented, maybe it's just money.
Yeah. I think just to that point, that's something that in terms of the brand that I've been able to build, it's always been about, are you looking after yourself? Are you looking after your family? How are you coming to work? Are you coming to work motivated? Are there certain things that are holding you back? What are those issues? And you've got to make sure you take care of those, or else you cannot be 100%. You can't deliver for your colleagues, most especially for your clients, if you're not there. So I think that has been my brand around how do we take care of each other so that we can perform better together.
Wow, you see, I'm sure the audience listening to this is an interesting tidbit, because I think at the end of the day, when people think about the trajectory to the highest level of organization, it's all about what are you giving to the company to make us all successful. But it's actually, it could be in your way, like, hey, listen, are you taking care of yourself and your personal experience? Because without you 100%, this all doesn't work. So what can I do to help you be the holistic person that you can be? And that I don't think that people understand that.
It's key. I mean, that people make fun of me all the time because we'll get into this, but I'm a big believer in this whole wellness front, and I started introducing ice baths to all my colleagues, and we would arrange every quarter, 6:30 in the morning. We're gonna meet here, and I've arranged for 4 different cold plunges to be set up, and people are jumping in. I wanted to introduce something new to really help people manage stress. We're all under stress daily.
Yeah, you look at the show like Billions. They introduced a in-house psychologist to deal with these on edge egos, right? But you look at, this trend is just going to be further and further, because it's just like our kids. Like we worry about the stress that they face every day, because it's not like when we grew up. We did our homework, ran outside, climbed trees, threw frisbee around, and that was it.
Simple.
Now there's thousands of different stressors, right? And so to be able to give back, to be able to provide this in a work environment is almost cutting edge. Like it seems obvious, but in professional sports they have this. Why not in actual profession? Right? Why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on.
Interesting. All right, cool. So that was actually, I learned some interesting tidbits as well. And I might have to implement some of those. Care about
anytime.
My people that I work with. So let's dive into DJing. So just for the record, I attended one of your sessions in Manila recently, which was, I told my wife how long I danced for, and she's like, you don't even sleep that long. But I tell you, music,
Yeah.
something about music and dancing, it really is, I mean, it's cliche, but it's really food for the soul.
Yes.
Like, and different music is for different people. But let's talk about your journey. So, you're always into music, and when did you start? So what I'm going to try to do is try to tie this all into one mosaic towards the end of this interview. But when did you start? Early interest, but when did you start DJing?
Right. Okay. So I would probably say I started DJing, learning how to DJ, probably when I was in New York. But that was just really through friends who were teaching me. They were playing in different clubs, and we're obviously going out and seeing all the different clubs back then. Of course, that was the highlight of Twilo and the Tunnels, or really some institutional clubs in New York.
Did you DJ at these clubs?
I didn't. I was still sort of learning the craft. But I only started really DJing when I got back to Manila.
Okay.
When I moved back to Manila in '96, and met up with some really close friends. You know them personally,
Yeah.
like Manolet Dario, who's obviously the DJ of the Philippines, which is where I'm from, and he started to get me deep into the scene. And that's really where I started to hone my craft, right back in the local, sort of house scene in the Philippines in the late 90s to early 2000s. I basically never looked back. I just picked it up and just went straight, because like I said, music was always in my blood, and I sort of had this ability to storytell.
Right.
Right? When I sort of hit the decks and I knew, what journey I was going to take people on.
That's it. And that is a hobby that has no ulterior motive except it makes me happy.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. That's a good feel vibe, no matter where you are.
And
Yeah.
so why? I mean, I think I know the answer, but there's different genres. But what genre do you like, and how did you get there?
Look, I mean, it's crazy. Like I started probably in the first instance, I was a trance DJ, because back then in the sort of late, sort of mid to late 90s, that was pretty much how things were going. And then sort of I transitioned from trance into progressive house, into tech. So I wouldn't classify myself as a DJ with a genre. I basically love music, and if music speaks to me, I don't care what genre it is. It's something that I'll try to integrate into my sets, because I think you want to continue to educate the crowd in terms of what music, not only do they want to hear, but what music do you think they want to hear.
Yeah.
So I would probably say I'm genre agnostic,
Mm-hmm.
and I default to quality music.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just no EDM.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe not hip hop.
Yes.
But yeah, man, I tell you, like the power of this stuff. My son's listening to he loves hip hop. He loves Kanye,
Okay.
and he feels so connected to it. Like it speaks to him.
Yeah.
And it's like when we were growing up, we'd listen to Depeche Mode or stuff, and you're like, oh my God, these guys really know me, right?
Yeah.
You listen to all the lyrics and things like that.
Well, it's emotional, right? I mean, it's always about telling a story. Every lyric has an expression. There is a place that it comes from, and that relates to so many different people, right? Depending on what phases of life they're into or what stage they're experiencing. So you're right, it's a connection.
And so right now, so where you're still DJing pretty regularly. So what's the itinerary? So once a month at least in Singapore, right?
Yeah, just like a funny story going back, right? I mean, having to sort of integrate, back then when I was sort of, I was already the CEO of, when I met you, we were together in Hong Kong. I was the CEO of the Hong Kong operations, and DJing 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, it was intense.
Yeah.
Because it was a passion, and I had this amazing ability to balance. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to sort of integrate that in terms of your professional scene. So thank God now I've got my family, I've got my wife and 4 kids. So being able to do that extensively is no longer in the cards. But yeah, if I can DJ maybe once a month, for me that's perfect.
I was actually professional, and I was going to listen to you DJ 3 or 4 times a week, and that was difficult.
That's right. That's right.
Amazing. But like, so in Singapore, I haven't been there.
Yeah.
I've been I've attended the potato
Yep, potato head, yeah.
events.
Yeah.
I've been to one where you combined ice baths and
Yep.
some cool,
Yep.
having juices in the morning.
Yes.
And
yeah.
DJing.
Immersion. The immersion.
The immersion,
Yeah,
is that still happening?
Yeah, Wild Pearl's still doing that. Shout out to Chris. So Wild Pearl still has their immersion events. If I can, if I'm gonna be true to my craft, I want to be able to play for a crowd.
Yeah.
That for me is okay. If I'm playing music just for, that's okay. I like that, but there's nothing like having
Yep.
a full floor.
And tell us about the Singapore venue. I haven't been.
Yeah.
I'll go to the next one for sure. It's at Rasa Space.
Rasa Space, yeah, in Republic
Okay.
Plaza. Beautiful new space that opened probably early in January.
Okay.
They have the best sound system ever, because I have the same sound system at home. But yeah, it's a beautiful space. Two floors. They've got one sort of, they call it the hall, which has a bar area, and then the main room, which is the floor, where they have these beautiful TPI
Okay.
system.
Cool.
Yeah.
And for everybody in the audience, we'll put your SoundCloud details, below, and some of how to follow you on Instagram and things
Sure.
like that.
Thank you.
All right. So, and highly encourage you, if David's ever playing at NoCal
Yeah.
in Manila, you have to go.
NoCal Manila. Let's go.
All right. So longevity. Okay. So this is something that I've become somewhat interested in myself, and actually from your inspiration. But I think you get to a certain age and you naturally just want to be healthier. Like, you've got kids, you're married, you want to live longer and healthier. But let's talk about your journey. Like, one, you've always been into fitness. Ever since I've known you, you've always excelled. You've been a Davis Cup tennis player, so you kind of know, you have an intimate connection between work, sport, and achievement, and so also it's good to be healthy and things like that. But this current interest, like, how did it begin? Like,
Yeah. Okay. So you're absolutely right. Spot on. I've been super into health, fitness. Always very sporty. But it came to a point probably, I would say, right during the pandemic. Where of course there's a lot of anxiety that takes control with not knowing what's going to happen. And I was still doing all my workouts, still feeling really good, but I just started feeling like, hey man, I'm not as energetic as I used to be, even though like you look good on the outside, but I just felt weak, hardly any energy. I was always getting sick. Every time I would travel, or the kids picked up a cold, automatic, I would get a cold. And this is already having, sort of managed my, I switched to becoming a vegetarian in 2018. That did wonders for me, by the way, but I just felt something else was missing. And then I started to get these debilitating migraines with frequency. I mean, I used to get them maybe once a year, but once a year, like, it's like almost 18 hours, you're curled up and you're nonstop throwing up. It would completely take me out. And then it started happening with more frequency, twice a year, 3 times a year, once a month. I said, this is not right. And I saw, a lot of doctors, neurologists, had MRIs. I said, look, there's nothing wrong with you. We can't pinpoint anything. I said, it's impossible that I could feel this way. There's got to be something wrong. And so that led me deep into the rabbit hole of, okay, I gotta fix myself, because even if I'm very healthy and I'm sporty, I just don't feel I can, get out of bed every day. And so that led me down. I was always sort of into ice baths for recovery, but then I started digging deeper. The key issue that I found out with me was just the constant inflammation that was starting to build up in my body because of the lifestyle that we lead, maybe the stress that we're under, basically living in an acidic state instead of being in an alkaline-free state. And so that led me into not just doing cold plunges for recovery, which was basically every time I had a big workout, so once a week, but I started doing it religiously every day as maintenance. And, you know, touch wood here, I've not had a single migraine.
Yeah,
since.
I remember.
I've not gotten sick since, for almost 2.5 years now.
So just to segue really quickly.
Yeah.
So you got me into ice baths. I bought an ice bath. I have it at home. Been doing regularly almost 2 years now, I think.
Yeah.
I have not gotten sick.
Yeah.
Now, literally, and I know this because we switched our insurance carriers at work, and I didn't know how to use it because I hadn't gone to the doctor in 2 years. So I didn't even know how to file a claim, and I looked at my record, and I went once because I sprained my ankle, I needed some ibuprofen. But I attributed 100% to the ice baths.
Yeah.
You know, that little bit of cardiovascular jolt in the morning really is.
It's like you said, it's all the inflammation that we've built up. You know, the ice bath basically just, you know, it scours your body of all these free radicals, kicks in your metabolism, and it basically just flushes out.
And do you think that these migraines that you had, that was from the inflammation?
Yeah.
So you
100%.
cured the inflammation, no more headaches.
No more headaches.
Migraines. Okay,
No
wow.
more headaches. Got it.
And then you've I mean, I know this, but you've obviously gotten a lot deeper into this. Let's talk about that journey.
So as I was sort of exploring and getting into, you know, how to continue to fix myself, I started sort of understanding the difference between, you know, this whole concept of lifespan and health span. And, you know, you're a family man, same here. You know, I want to live a long life. I don't want to be like a Brian Johnson, crazy 180 years. No, I want to be able to live probably till I'm 100 and get to see my kids grow and have their kids and all of that. So I started to dig deeper in terms of what will improve health span for me going forward. And I started to experiment on myself, which is a true biohacker, I guess, concept, on what modalities will make me feel even better. And so I found you know, this protocol, which is called the superhuman protocol, which we can get into a little bit deeper. But it basically mimics how we were when we were cavemen, right? We were always barefoot, meaning we were always grounded to the earth. We were breathing in the best type of air, oxygen, unpolluted, and we were getting amazing sunlight every day. Fast forward to where we are now, you know, we're never barefoot unless we're in the beach. The air that we breathe is not ideal, and sunlight can be very, very harmful. Mm-hmm. So the superhuman protocol basically takes all of those core concepts of magnetism, oxygen, and light, but putting in 21st century technology, modern day technology, to basically give you that same feel. So I've implemented that. That's basically my core foundation every day. You know, wake up in the morning, I'll lie on a pulse electromagnetic mat, a PEMF mat, for 12 minutes, and what that does, it separates your cells, right? Because our cells are acidic when we wake up, and when we stay on the mat for 12 minutes, it separates your cells. Now your cells are ready to absorb oxygen. So after that, I go on to my exercise with oxygen therapy. I've got a assault bike, and I breathe in 93% pure oxygen, not polluted air, pure oxygen from an oxygen generator. 900 liters that I basically consume while I'm doing zone 2 cardio. And what that does is on zone 2 cardio, your cells start to expand even further, allowing for the pure oxygen to dock onto your cells. And then when you're finished, you end up with 15 to 20 minutes on a red light bed. And the red light just penetrates and basically just recharges your cells.
And the red light is to replicate the
sunlight.
Okay.
But not harmful sunlight, right?
Right.
So no UV at all in there, and you can get it done in 15, 20 minutes. And that whole process basically then helps regenerate your cells, right? Because this whole adage, the older you get, your cells are just gonna die. Wrong. your cells can continue to regenerate. You just have to figure out the right protocols to make it happen. So that has been, over the last 2 years, along with the ice bath, has been sort of the core foundation to my health, which I feel like amazing, like my energy levels, my mental clarity, so this ability of not being able to get sick consistently, knowing that I have a very stressful life with work and travel and family and all the other passions that I do. It's been a pretty much a game changer for me.
Amazing. Yeah, I think people, don't understand that concept. It's okay, it's fine to live to 80 or 100, but if you're not functional, there's no point, right? So there's a quality of life issue that with the technology now. I mean, heck, technology helps us in work life. Why can't we use technology to affect our health life? Correct. So, and let's dig a little bit about how this is now going to evolve into a more serious hobby / venture.
Yeah. So, like I said, you always think like, what are you going to do next when you're retired? I've been with this amazing company for so many years. Of course, I still have runway and will continue to see my career with them. But what do you do post retirement? Like, where am I going to spend all this time and energy and passion? And, because I love what I do in terms of the health and wellness space, I will be opening up a wellness center, with Amanda in the Philippines, probably this year around September. And it'll be the first of its kind to be a social wellness space in the Philippines, but the first of its kind that will combine the biohacking modalities that I just spoke about, the superhuman protocol, as well as some other cutting edge modalities, with a social contrast therapy space. So meaning, a large sauna and then multiple cold plunges for people to use in a very social setting, and then all basically coming together with a very healthy life bar. It'll be, like I said, it'll be the first of its kind, and something that I really feel that, because I benefited, you're benefiting from it. I want so many more people in the Philippines to benefit from this sort of new lifestyle that I think we're all heading into.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, it's a health revolution that's coming.
For sure. I think a lot of it is also exposure, education. First of all, people see these things as sort of like, who are these people that are jumping into tubs full of ice?
Yeah.
Then they do it. They're like, oh, this is interesting. But then once Leonardo DiCaprio starts doing it, or Blackpink starts doing it, once it becomes, a commonly accepted way to live, and that's accessible. And also, we were talking about this before the interview. I'm really into paddle, and when I travel now, I'm like,
yes,
where's the nearest paddle to this hotel? But it's only a matter of time where you go, does this hotel have an ice bath, right? Or does this hotel have a infrared sauna? Like, it's only a matter of time. I can guarantee you, same time next year, you'll start seeing hotels implementing this stuff, because it's not expensive accessibility, it's just people need to see it and have access to it. And it's good for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think people long for is the whole connectivity piece. So if you can bring all of that into a space where you can meet like-minded people, either we're having a sauna session together, we're in the cold plunge together, or we're in the cafe or the bar. I mean, I want to develop this third space where you've got your workspace, you've got your family space, but here is another space where you can come and you can enrich yourself through health protocols, getting to meet like-minded people, and just having a great time doing it.
I was just interviewed by somebody called Max Chernov on YouTube, and we were talking about AI, and how I was talking about the world is moving. I mean, I think it's kind of a phrase we just throw out, how it's more community based, but I think things like energy is going to be more community focused going forward. but we're all involved in communities we don't know. I've got 5 different WhatsApp chats. One's my kids' 5th grade chat, that's a community. I've got a paddle chat, that's community. I've got a tennis chat, that's community. And you have connectivity. You have something in common, right? So, and I think that's fantastic, bringing all these, and I'm assuming there's going to be some DJing.
For sure, we're going to have an amazing, sort of super high-end DJ booth, which will feature acts and people coming in. It'll just be a completely healthy place. Of course, there's no alcohol in this wellness space, but we'll be serving amazing smoothies, coffees, and healthy treats.
I remember going to this wild pearl.
Yeah, wild pearl.
Wild pearl.
Immersion. Yeah.
And I went up there, and you were I think it was either you or Luke was DJing, and I was like, what is going on? Right?
With kombucha.
The music is something I'm used to listening to at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
But it's 6 a.m. and the people are jumping in the ice baths and drinking kombucha, and there's the AG1 guy. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is really cool, right?
Yes.
And just a shout out to Amanda. So David's married to Amanda Griffin. She's in Manila. She has a Vita Yoga, which is a hot yoga studio. And Amanda, we'll have you on when you come to Singapore, and I'll go through this. I'll interview you as well.
She's amazing. She's amazing, by the way. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, man, that was an interesting journey.
Stay tuned. Longevity Labs.
Longevity Labs.
That's the name of the wellness space, opening soon.
Do you have any Instagram or?
I'll give you the details shortly. We're launching our Instagram teasers probably this week. So
we'll put that all in the.
You can put it all there for people
description
to
below.
come into. Yeah.
Well, listen, this was short and sweet. I've been meaning to get you out here. I know you're super busy traveling around. You're the CEO of, the #1 risk company in all of Asia except for Thailand. Well, that's happening soon. I don't know who's #1, but you're out of there. Globally renowned DJ, soon globally renowned longevity, expert. Like I can't even manage my own life, and you've got, so much going on. But yeah, man, anything you wanna talk about, or anything interesting that's on your mind?
Yeah, look, I say this all the time, and we'll talk more on the health and wellness space. Like,
I have one last question. Actually.
Yeah, sure. I would just say that, being healthy is a choice.
Yep.
Right, and like you said, the older we get, that becomes a choice. You can either just say, okay, this is my age, this is the way I'm meant to feel, or you can say, wrong. I can actually do something about it and feel amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people to start to really feel like, hey, you can do this. And we're gonna make it available for people to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question. We're gonna end it with this question. So if you could tell the average person on the street, right? If he could do 3 things that will change his health life forever, right? I've got 3 ideas, but I want to hear yours. Get your reaction.
So I'll just go back very simply to the superhuman protocol. You can do it the way I do it, which you have machines, but if you want to do it the free way, then you wake up every morning, you get out and find some soil to just ground your feet in for 20-30 minutes. While you're there, do some breath work so you can practice meditation, at the same time connect, and then if you can, get 30 minutes of sun. And you've got that. Simple, right? Magnetism, oxygen, and light.
What about diet? What 3 things you change in somebody's diet that?
So if you can, #1, try to get rid of all the processed foods. Try to get rid of, if you can, all the vegetable oils that's being used, in your diet. That for me is #1. And yeah, just try to be more organic in terms of the. I'm not advocating for vegetarian, or just try to be more organic.
Yeah, those are my. We stopped using oils at home, so we're using butter with a combination with beef tallow or olive oil.
Yeah.
No canola, all that stuff. That's gone. And also processed foods. It's hard, but we try to.
Yeah.
It's more snacks when we come home, and who doesn't like a good Dorito? Every so often.
Every so often,
and
for sure.
and sugar.
Yeah.
You know, I think sugar literally is probably the biggest silent killer. You know, I'm not a sugar guy, but I can see, you know, actually, yeah, I can see that being an issue. So we're trying to curtail a lot of that stuff, and a lot of that stuff actually is in processed foods.
Yeah,
But,
already. Yeah.
Well, super interesting.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks you for your time and
Yeah.
your insights. I actually learned quite a bit,
Yeah.
and I hope the audience learned a little bit. And you know, hope to get your wife on here
Yeah.
when she's in town and
Yeah.
spend me some time. And or if I'm in Manila, I can go to your
Yeah.
house and
Yeah.
you know interview her. But again, thanks for your time, and you know, look forward to seeing the rest of your journey and everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Steve.
All right,
All the
take care.
best.
Bye bye.